word that Adam Schefter has to say, because we will play Know the Show, Know the Schefter, coming up around 8:30 for your chance to win the pair of tickets to see Post Malone and Jelly Roll next summer, or Memorial Day weekend at Citizens Bank Park. Shefty, good morning. How are we today?
Good morning. How are we doing?
We are
very well,
doing great when it comes to Eagles land, and that's what we're talking to you about today, Shefty. It's nice to not have drama surrounding the Philadelphia Eagles right now. It's nice not having to talk about Nick Sirianni and in-game decisions. But one of the things that's been talked about here locally and now nationally a little bit has been Saquon Barkley and him not getting the touchdowns because of the tush push. You are more connected than a lot of people. So I'll ask you, is there anything there when it comes to Saquon Barkley?
I mean, I have him on my fantasy team. I'm not happy with it.
Of course.
Selfish bastard.
That may be the biggest thing, and I'm going to have to talk to Nick about that and say, I don't like this. I want some touchdowns on the 1 yard line. The fact of the matter is, I think he's been tackled at the 1 yard line 7 times. Am I correct?
Yes.
Right. So, listen, Saquon has been unbelievable this year. He's been great. But there have been 7 instances where all he needed was 1 more yard, and we wouldn't even be having this conversation. So, fall into the end zone. Don't step out. Whatever it is. He knows how to play the position. I don't have to tell him what to do, but I certainly would appreciate if he did capitalize on some of those opportunities, and rather than the tush push, they give him some of those chances to cash in on the touchdowns that he helped earn.
The opinion on the Eagles around the league when you talk to people that aren't connected like us, that aren't locals. Did the Washington win maybe change some people's thought processes about how real this team is, or do you think it just reinforced what people thought?
Well, I think people expected Philly to win that game, and I think now that they've ripped off all these wins in a row, what's their record right now? 7-2?
8-2.
8-2.
8-2.
8-2.
Number 2 seed by 2.5 games over the Falcons. Over the Cardinals.
Listen, they're rolling along. And so, to me, they're taking care of their business. And their job is just keep stacking these wins and putting themselves in position. I can't see how Detroit isn't going to be the number 1 seed. I just can't see that. But we'll see how that plays out. That's going to be the challenge. Finding a way, if it goes the way we think, midway or 10 games into the season, to win in Detroit. They're capable of doing it. And by the way, we're just assuming that Detroit holds up as the 1 and Philly holds up as the 2. And things always change, so you just don't know. But it's hard to imagine today that Detroit wouldn't be the 1 and Philly wouldn't be the 2. Although maybe, Detroit loses some guys down the stretch, or Philly loses some guys down the stretch. But if both teams stay healthy, I think you're looking at Detroit 1, Philly 2. Although, you see Detroit's schedule. I'm sitting here.
They have the Packers. They have the Packers at home. They have the Bills at home. They go to the 49ers. They host the Vikings. They have a much harder schedule than the Eagles do if you take all the games intact.
But by the way, John, there's not a game there that you mentioned I don't believe that they're going to be an underdog for.
No, I don't think they're an underdog the rest of the way. And the Eagles are going to be an underdog at the Ravens, I would figure. And they won't be an underdog the rest of the way other than that. And the Ravens game might be really close.
Yeah, Shefty, do you think the Lions are in a tier of their own? Obviously, any given Sunday, any team can beat anybody. But if I were to say Lions, Eagles, are they on the same platform in your opinion? Or do you think the Lions still have that leg up, take the win-loss record aside because they're 1 game back?
I think the Lions are the best team in football. I do. I thought that. Now, again, 1 game, Philly is one of the best teams in football. But Detroit just looks like it's their year to me, which doesn't clinch anything. Doesn't mean anything. I'm just telling you, when I watch them, I say, boy, this team is good. I just feel like I say that about them every week I watch them. I'm like, man, they're tough. Somebody could beat them, but it's going to take a hell of a game. a hell of a game.
Do me a favor. Tell me about if it's NFC title game, and we're talking about Goff and Hurts on that stage.
Yeah.
Are we making too much of the quarterbacks and not looking at the surrounding casts? Or do you believe Jalen Hurts maybe and is right there with Jared Goff is able to lead a team to a Super Bowl? We've already seen it once. Both men have done it.
Right, both teams have done it, and both men have done it, and both men came up just short. So, they definitely could do it and get it done. And I don't know if it's about the quarterbacks, and I don't know if it's all about the quarterbacks. To me, those are probably the two best teams because they're the two best teams, and I emphasize the word teams, full talent, right? And Detroit's got a stacked roster. Philly's got a deep, strong roster. Like they're two really good teams. And again, it's a playoff game. Like, of course the Eagles could beat them. I'm not saying they can't. I'm just saying today when I watch these teams, Detroit is the best team in football to me. That's all. Whatever that's worth on November 20th.
We're speaking to Adam Schefter on the Comcast Business Hotline. Shefty, before the season started, and sometimes we play read between the Shefty. We play read between the lines. You talked about how Jalen Hurts, it was very important for him to have a bounce-back season this year, to play more like 2022 Jalen Hurts than what we saw last year. Do you believe that we're seeing that? Do you believe that the Eagles are in a better place with this version of Jalen Hurts based off of the things that you were kind of referencing to before the season started?
Well, they're winning. They're 8-2. Like when you're 8-2, everything's great. So that's all that matters. And so they're answering the questions. And by the way, the questions aren't all answered on November 20th. To date, they've answered them just the way they should have. And now they get answered over the stretch run. And now we'll see how they respond in the postseason because they're tracking to win the division and host a playoff game and make some noise there.
Maybe two. As the 2 seed, you get to host twice. So,
yeah, exactly. So, let's see how it works out. They'll be judged over the course of the season, but they're in a great spot today.
When you look at the job that this Eagles team has done, the young defense under Vic Fangio, who we know you're a Fangio like I am, this challenge against the Rams is a little bit different because the tandem of wide receivers is going to be especially taxing. How excited are you to watch this matchup, and how much of a challenge do you think this is going to be for the Eagles' young secondary?
So those guys are good. I mean, they're really good. And what's interesting is since Puka came back and Cooper came back, it's diminished the production of Kyron Williams, also on per sources, by the way. Also on per sources. My two running backs are Kyron Williams and Saquon Barkley. But the wide receivers, man, they're good. Like, they're really productive. They make big plays. They're each capable of beating you. They're really good. It's tough. Where's that game? Is it in L.A.?
It's in L.A., yes, Sunday night.
Oh, this Sunday night, Eagles-Rams? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I look forward to watching that coming home from Bristol.
Shefty, how important, we know that talent is very important for a football team in order to win. Shocker. How important is having a functional organization? Because I look inside the NFC East, obviously the Eagles and Commanders are doing pretty well, but there's dysfunction in Dallas and New York. How important is having a functional organization where there's not just drama all the time in order to have success in this league?
Well, winning gets rid of that. Like when Dallas was winning last year, you didn't hear that they were dysfunctional. You didn't hear that wasn't the focus. But because they're not winning this year, because the quarterback's hurt, because everything's gone south, now they're dysfunctional. When you're not winning, that's what happens. Washington, all these years, never winning. Always dysfunctional. Get a new coach, get a new quarterback, get a new GM, get a new owner. Oh, funny. They're winning, and they're not dysfunctional. Wow. Shocking how that goes together. Winning and functionality. Losing and dysfunctional. Like, it's so predictable. Just like in a winning locker room, you don't hear the complaints. Everything's good. You just don't hear it. When a team loses, this coach can't do this, or you get people talking behind people's. It's so simple, but it's so true. You win, everything's great. You lose, in this world that we live in, with a scrutiny on everything, everybody comes under the microscope. You win, you're functional. You lose, you're not. Like,
well, last year though, the Eagles were 10-1. They were actually better. You know, they were 10-1, and it was reported, locally that they were the most miserable 10-1 team that guys on our beat had ever witnessed and ever seen. So sometimes winning doesn't cure everything, right?
No, but I'm going to say, and it's hard to actually quantify this.
Okay.
But if we go back to when the Eagles were 10-1 last year, you're telling me there were negative stories floating around about them being.
Yes, there was a Jeff McClain, top beat writer in the country by his peers, flat out reported that it was the most miserable 10-1 team. Mm-hmm. And then after the year, it was verified by Eagles players that they were a miserable bunch and they weren't, like, it wasn't getting along.
Well, again, I applaud Jeff for reporting that when they were 10-1. That's really impressive. I'm not surprised to hear when the second half of the season goes the way that it did, that people were miserable. Like, that's going to be obvious at the end. It wasn't obvious when he reported it, but when you're losing at the second half that they did, of course, everybody's going to be miserable.
All right, now, last thing, outside of Philadelphia, the New York Jets, a team that a lot of people picked to make a run to the Super Bowl this year.
Speaking of functionality.
Yeah, exactly. What happens next? Joe Douglas, first of all, I have eyes on him. If he would like to make a return to Philadelphia to work with Howie Roseman, I would welcome him back with open arms. But what happens next in New York with Rodgers and everything that's going on with the Jets?
Well, they need a new GM. They need a new head coach. And so basically they're overhauling the organization. That's what's going on there. So I don't know if they're going to bring on a search firm. I always wonder about that. You know, these owners spend money on those kinds of things, and no disrespect, there are very smart people that are involved, but you can make a few calls and get the same information, very similar information. And so, I think that I wouldn't be shocked if they go out and hire a search firm, and then they have to decide what direction they want to take the organization, how they want to do this. There's going to be some big decisions, and they haven't gotten many of them right. So if they want to turn it around, they're going to have to do that, and it's not going to be easy.
Schefter, you're the man. We appreciate the time as always. We always like talking to you, and can't wait to talk to you again next week.
Some good football ahead this week, and I appreciate you alerting me to the fact that Sunday night is Eagles-Rams. I lost sight of that with all the commotion and all the noise in New York over the football decisions that were made here.
Yeah, I'm sure that's been that's kept you busy recently with both teams from New York. Thanks, Schefter. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
There is Adam Schefter on the Comcast Business Hotline, brought to us by